Hi everyone, welcome back to Gavin Reads It All. Today I want to do a ranking of the 22 Stephen King books that I've read so far for my Gavin Reads All the King series on YouTube. So just over a year ago, I decided to start my Stephen King journey by reading every book of his in publication order. There are some little tweaks and changes. I am kind of prioritizing the main novels by Stephen King, and then I'm going into the short stories and the novella collections every now and then. And I'm also saving some of the non-fiction for a special episode, and I'm saving Dark Tower for its own episode too. I want to read all of the Dark Tower in one video, so I should be doing that in the next year and a half to 2 years. But I am committed to reading all of Stephen King, so that's what my series is about. Gavin Reads All the King. I will leave the playlist down in the description box if you want to check out my thoughts on the first 22 Stephen King books that I've read. I also have this unofficial Stephen King constant reader checklist that I downloaded off Reddit, and you can kind of see my progress with it there. We have the books I own and then the books that I've read. So I am going up to around about the Tommyknockers. So this is going to be from Carrie to the Tommyknockers. Obviously, I haven't read the first Dark Tower book or Dance Macabre. And you will also say that I have read Devil's Game, Dolores Claiborne, and Rose Madder, but I'm not including this in this video, in this tier ranking, because I haven't reread those yet for my Gavin Reads All the King series. So I do plan on doing an updated ranking every October. So this is going to be an annual thing, a Gavin Ranks All the King annual check-in for, my thoughts on all of these books so far. So I will update this a year from now, and then another year from now, and then until I finish the entire of Stephen King's bibliography. So this is really cool. I'll leave a link to download this down in the description box. Thank you so much to the person on Reddit who made this. I love it. I swear by it. I love filling it in. And then, yeah, let's get into what my tier ranking is. So please do like this video if you enjoy, subscribe if you haven't already, grab yourself a drink, and let's begin. So this is my tier ranking tiers. And obviously, none of this is original. I feel like so many people use these Stephen King quotes for these tiers. So here we have number one fan. So those are the books that I love the most. I would absolutely 100% reread them multiple times a year if possible. So those are my favorite Stephen King books. And then Come Play With Us are the ones that I do really enjoy. I do really like these ones. They are so close to greatness, but they're not exactly on the same, tier as my all-time favorite Stephen King books so far. And I do want to reiterate as well, these rankings could change in the future. So every time I do an annual check-in, something might shift. So I will obviously keep you updated with that. In the middle here, we have Sometimes Dead Is Better. These are the ones that had the most potential, and they are good, but I wouldn't be, digging up the corpse of them and trying to reread them in the future or anything like that. I do like them, but I don't like them enough to resurrect them, if you know what I mean. All Work and No Play are the books that I don't think are terrible, but they felt more like work reading them rather than, having actual enjoyment while reading them. I can understand the merits of these books. I can really appreciate the craft that Stephen King went through to write them, but they're not my favorite. I probably would never reread these. And then We All Float Down Here, bottom tier. I would definitely not follow a clown into a storm drain if they were holding up this book. No thanks. You can keep the book, I'm off. So I would not go into a storm drain for these bottom books. And, I do want to say this is all my personal opinion. Your opinion on these Stephen King books are probably so different to mine, and that's absolutely fine. Please respect my opinion. I'll respect yours. This is all subjective at the end of the day, but bottom line is I love Stephen King and I love his books, and sometimes they don't hit the same. So anyway, I've delayed it long enough. Let's get into it. And I'm such a nerd, right? This is all in order of when I read them. So we have Carrie here, his very first published book, and the first book I read for Gavin Reads All the King. And I would actually put this into Come Play With Us. I really enjoyed Carrie so much. Loved the mixed media format of it. It made it feel so real. And also it made me feel so bad for Carrie. It made me realize that these cast of characters are just kids. And this is a very traumatizing read at times as well, because we do see Carrie getting so abused, and not just from her classmates, but from her mother. So everything with Margaret as well was so terrifying to me. And I just felt so bad for Carrie. And I just felt this sense of unease the entire way through. You have Stephen King dropping in little things like, oh, there would only be 12 survivors, long before the actual event takes place. I should also say, there'll not be spoilers, at least not obvious spoilers in this video. I'm going to try and keep it as spoiler-free as possible. There might be some things, I feel like a lot of people know, the story of Carrie. They know that she gets dunked with pig's blood and she goes on a killing spree. I feel like that's kind of a given at this point. The build-up to that was so intense, and I just felt, honestly, and utterly devastated for Carrie. It's one of those things where I know she does something bad, But at the same time, I was kind of rooting for her a little bit. Like, I know that's terrible to say, but I really did sympathize with Carrie. And obviously, she did go a little bit too far. I will say that. She went a little bit too far. But all the lead up to that, you know, like the fact that she was asked to prom and she was so happy, and she was just happy to have like a hamburger, which is such a normal thing. And I feel like it's so easy to forget that Carrie was so sheltered, and, you know, she didn't really get to experience a lot of the really cool things that teenagers are supposed to experience. And so it's just devastating. It's honestly such a devastating story. I really enjoyed it. It's short enough that it's not like too, you know, long. It's not too bloated like some of other Stephen King's works. I do think that, you know, we hit the nail with the head. Wait, hang on. We hit the head of the nail? We hit the nail with the hammer. You know what I mean? Like, you know the analogy or whatever. So yeah, I feel like we came out really strong with this one. Next, we have Salem's Lot. And I initially gave this 4 stars, and then I moved it up to a 4.5. And I'm so tempted to give it a 5-star now. Salem's Lot, I am its #1 fan. I really am. I freaking love it. And I love the short stories. I mean, I'll talk about them when we get to like Night Shift, but I even love the stories around Jerusalem's Lot and the lore behind that. I would love to see a lot more to do with Salem's Lot. But yeah, I freaking loved it. I loved the atmosphere of it. It felt very gothic. The writing of it I thought was superb. Loved the Marston house as well, which is like a major setting and a major set piece in Salem's Lot, and just the idea of it, I felt like it was shrouded in mystery, and there was like this urban legend around it about like this hanging man, and the main character might have seen this hanging man inside of it at one point. And I just, it's so good. It's so good. So many scary moments as well. And, you know, you do have this entire town, and you just like have this like slow build, and you start to see like people go missing, and there's like some random attacks, and you don't really know what's going on. And I didn't even know this was a vampire novel going into it, by the way. Like, I had no idea what the hell Salem's Lot was actually about. Honestly, the title made me think of witches, like Salem, and you know what I mean? So like, I went into it not knowing much, and I came out with it richer for it. So definitely one of my favorite like settings of a Stephen King novel. I really do like Ben, the main character. I like his relationship with Susan. I thought they were like very well matched, and I liked the little bit of investigations that were happening. I liked the character connections that were happening. Straker as well was a very interesting character to follow. And then obviously Barlow as well was so intense and so good. And just seeing how hysteria and fear grips an entire town, it felt almost bleak. It felt almost hopeless. And I just love seeing the chaos just slowly unfold. And then it just kind of went balls to the wall by the end. So I loved it. I loved it. Amazing, amazing. I said I gave it a 4.5. I'm most likely going to give it a 5-star now. I'm not going to lie. Like, it was so good. It was so good. Okay, and then The Shining. Please don't hate me. Please, 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 please don't hate me. I'm either going to put The Shining in Sometimes Dead is Better, or at the end of Come Play With Us. At the minute, I might just put it in the end of Come Play With Us, because, I mean, not only is that a reference to The Shining, but I did really appreciate what Stephen King did with the main character of Jack. And I do think the book is better than the movie when it comes to displaying Jack as a character. I do love the movie, but I think the book and the movie are two totally different things in my head. And I think the Shining book, it could have been scarier. You know, like, there wasn't anything about it that really truly scared me to my core. The thing that scared me the most was Jack's deterioration, and the way that he was so, you know, threatening towards his family, and the way that the Overlook Hotel started to grip him and change him. That was terrifying. I will give it that. That was terrifying. But the stuff with the wasps, the stuff with the hedge animals and stuff, I don't know, like, some of it felt like it was playing in my head a little bit too silly. Obviously, like, that's not really the case. Like, I don't think it is actually silly, but just the way it played in my head, like the whole hedge animals, just, yeah, I didn't really love that. I did love the exploration of what The Shining is in the Knack, and Halloran kind of explaining it as well. I love the exploration of that. I thought that was really interesting. The Overlook Hotel, again, is like a really great setting for a Stephen King novel. It is definitely one of my favorites, as well as the Marston house from Salem's Lot. Jack's own backstory with his own father was genuinely upsetting, and Jack himself was just really the most complex character, I think, of any of Stephen King's protagonists, because he's not really like a morally good guy or anything. He has done things that are very questionable, and some of the things that he did to his own child is very questionable. And then you see like the roots of his own like trauma, and it's just so good. And like the whole theme of alcoholism, that was really explored well. But I think maybe it was one of those stories where I went in with higher hopes than I was anticipating, and I think it just fell short a little bit of my hopes and dreams for this book. And it didn't quite live up to the hype I had for it in my own head. And I have read The Shining twice. I read The Shining for the first time back in 2022 or 2021 or somewhere about there, and then I reread it again last year in 2024, and it was more like a 3 to a 3.5 star for me personally. So that's why it's on like the bottom of Come Play With Us, and maybe sometimes that is better, because it's like that 3 star. It's like, it's a great rating, don't get me wrong. A 3 star out of 5 is a really good rating, but it's like, I don't know. We'll continue on. Rage is a hard one to talk about, because which one would I go into? All Work and No Play. We all float down here. It's definitely not one of my favorites. I feel like the notoriety of this book is better than the actual like story itself, or at least like it's what's made this book like more famous in recent times, is like that the fact that Stephen King banned his own book. I'll put in All Work and No Play for the minute. Like, it wasn't a terrible read. It was just one that I didn't really fully connect with and understand a lot of the time as well. So we do have it, and I'm not really explaining what these books are about, because I feel like with Stephen King's books, you don't really need to know the plot or me to like summarize the plot for you. I feel like that could be a little bit boring to watch. And if you do want any more of my like critical and more in-depth spoiler-filled thoughts on these books, then I do have a playlist down below. I do talk a lot about these books for like half an hour to an hour, you know what I mean? So like, I don't really need to reiterate a lot of that. But Rage itself, so it's like a guy who holds his classroom hostage, and it was interesting because I didn't expect the trajectory of it. You know, like, it felt like a hostage situation, and it was a hostage situation, but the actual things that were brought up, the actual themes that we explored, didn't quite match up to what I expected in my head. I do really think King does a really good job at highlighting how senseless like school shootings and like gun violence is. I don't think he glorifies it at all. I actually really do think that he does a good job at showing how sensitive it is. And he isn't, justifying anyone's actions or anything like that. It was just it was interesting. It's so hard to talk about though, because I couldn't wrap my head around like some of the behavior of the characters, like the classroom that he holds hostage, some of the, other teens, like they don't act the way I thought they would act. And I just felt it was a little bit of a fever dream at times. And it's a hard one to talk about, I'm not gonna lie. It was definitely scary, like how easy it is to get a gun. And that is such a huge prevalent thing in just like today's politics as well, is how easy it is for people to get access to guns and how quickly they use them and stuff. So like, it is a massive conversation to be had. And I don't think Rage really should be banned. I don't think it is that bad of a book that it would encourage people to do anything. I know like there's a whole, thing about it from like the 90s. And so I know there's like a huge conversation around it, but I personally didn't think Rage was that bad. But it's not one I think I would love to reread, honestly, and it did feel a little bit like work reading it, because it is one that you can say I enjoyed my time reading it, but it's there. It is there, and I'm glad I read it. Okay, next is The Stand. Okay, so I know this is a lot of people's most favorite Stephen King book. If you watch my episode 2 of Gavin Reads All the King, I split it into sections because The Stand is like 3 parts and it's massive. And I did think the first part of this book was like a 4.5. It was up there. It was so good. I was so enamored by it. It was so exciting. Love the introduction of the characters. Love the introduction of like this pandemic that's come, and like the sickness, and how people are like dropping like flies, and like there's no great loss there and stuff like that. Like, it was so riveting, the first part of this. And then part 2, it kind of dropped from like a 4.5 to a 3. like I would rate the first part 4.5, second part a 3, and then the third and final part like a 2.5. Like, I did not like the overall direction of The Stand. I much preferred it when we stuck to like the initial outbreak and the initial panic and stuff like that. And then it turned into like a good versus evil kind of story that I didn't really fully expect, and I didn't really fully like all that much, because a lot of it felt a little bit convenient. Like, people were led places, people were having dreams, and they just knew where to go. And then the final confrontation as well, it felt like a lot of it was just you know, a greater being, and a lot of it was guided. And I guess that was probably the point. But I don't know, I felt like some of that was like a little bit too easy. So I didn't fully love the direction. But I will say this book is filled with the most interesting of characters. I freaking love Nick. Nick is probably one of my favorite Stephen King characters. Freaking loved him. I also like Stu and Franny. I thought they were good. But also the introduction of Randall Flagg was fantastic. Made me so excited to consume more Randall Flagg stories because he, oh my gosh, like he just had this air of mystery about him and the intrigue was really high with him. And his scenes were some of the most like horrific sometimes. And there was like definitely a lot of potential there. Wasn't the biggest fan of the whole Mother Abigail stuff, to be honest. And also the idea of rebuilding civilization after something like this has happened. I said this in my episode 2 video, but it felt like, you know, The Walking Dead. I loved The Walking Dead back in the day, and I loved it when we focused on the outbreak and the zombies and the things that I was watching a zombie show for. But then as soon as we started to get into the, you know, rebuilding civilization and the day-to-day life, I got really bored with that because that's not why I watch a zombie show. So it's a little bit like The Stand. I didn't read The Stand to read a book about people rebuilding their lives after like tragedy kind of strikes. But again, it's a 1,200 page book, so obviously we couldn't have just focused completely on the pandemic and the outbreak and stuff. So I get it, I do get it, but it just took a direction I didn't fully love. So I do apologize for that. Lots of stuff to love about it. I love the scenes with Lloyd because I found him quite scary. Obviously Trash Can Man. Yeah, and Randall Flagg. Yeah, there was a lot to like about it. I do understand why people love it, but for me, it was a story that started off so brilliantly and just kind of went downhill after that. So I would put The Stand after The Shining, making top of their end of Come Play With Us. I want to put it here for now because I really do think that opening the first however many pages part 1 is, I thought was so solid and so brilliant that it would have easily been at the end of here. But then it just kind of, it dropped pretty rapidly, unfortunately. And I do apologize to everyone who loves that one so much. I'm so sorry. Okay, the next one is The Long Walk. I haven't seen the new film that's just come out. I'm so excited to. But I fucking love The Long Walk. I thought it was so fantastic. And I think it was the first Stephen King book to make me really, really emotional. I did get emotional reading Carrie because I felt so bad for Carrie. But The Long Walk, oh my gosh, there were so many characters I was rooting for. And I just fully felt entirely heartbroken for. There are some like death scenes that are just so tragic, and it wasn't just like a case of it being so, you know, cut and dry with the characters. Like some of them were so multifaceted that you would think that they were like a hindrance, or you would think that they were a bad guy, but then you see that they're all in the same kind of boat and they're all like fighting for their lives essentially, and there's just like so many layers to it. I would put it in #1 fan. I loved it. I genuinely loved it. I would probably say like McVrayus was like my favorite character. I did really enjoy the main character as well, Ray Garrity. I thought he was a really interesting person to follow. And I love the premise of it as well. It was so dystopian, and the fact that it's televised, the idea of walking in, you're not allowed to go under a certain like miles per hour. That was terrifying. That was genuinely terrifying. And you do really feel the desperation of the characters. Like they don't really have much of a choice when they join The Long Walk. And The Long Walk does feel like a metaphor for so many things like war and, you know, people going to war and not having a choice, and, you know, like death. And there's just so much to explore there. And I do go more in depth in my video again. So yeah, The Long Walk was genuinely so exciting, but also tragic. There was so much tragedy in it. And there's definitely a scene that really sticks out. You know what? Very gory. There's a few scenes that stick out. There's one really gory one really touching scene as well of like 2 characters who speak different languages, but like, oh, that was so touching. Anyway, I could talk about it for ages. Let's move on to The Dead Zone. So The Dead Zone is one that I thought was so massively underrated. It's definitely the Stephen King book I heard the least about from his earlier stuff. I should also reiterate as well, I've never seen an adaptation of The Dead Zone. I've never seen an adaptation for most of these Stephen King novels as well, so reading these books were sometimes my first time reading them. Some of them were rereads like Carrie, The Shining, but a lot of times I haven't seen an adaptation and I'm going in completely blind. I went into The Dead Zone completely blind and I came out, oh my gosh, like with one of my new favorites. So yeah, I would definitely put The Dead Zone up in #1 fan. I honestly, it's probably a surprise to you, but the stuff with like Castle Rock, for instance, and the Castle Rock Strangler, oh my god, like, that was some of the most riveting stuff I'd ever read. And also I loved, you know, John Smith, and I mean, he's such an unassuming guy, especially with the name John Smith. but I loved following him as well. So he gets into an accident, he's in a coma for years, and when he wakes up, things are different, and he's also able to, like, well, when he wakes up, he's able to see moments of the future and the past. And it's like a very scary kind of power to have, but like a really cool and interesting one as well. But the idea that he's lost so much time in his coma made me feel so sorry for him as well. And it just humanized him a lot as well, because you got to see, you know, like his relationship is obviously like not happening anymore because he's been in a coma for years. His parents are older now as well, so he's lost time with his parents. And there's just so much about that I loved. And I fucking hated Greg. Greg has to be one of the most despised characters I've ever come across in a Stephen King novel. I honestly loathe that man. I hate him so much. Felt very relevant to a lot of like stuff happening, you know, today. But his introduction was, oh, I'm not even going to repeat it. It was that bad, but I was actively rooting against him. I was rooting for John Smith, and I was actively rooting against Greg. But yeah, freaking loved The Dead Zone. Firestarter, not so much, unfortunately. Oh, Firestarter, I do think would go at the top of all work and no play. I just found it rather boring. I did. I found it rather boring. I like the idea of following Charlie. She's a child. She has pyrokinesis. And like her and her father are on the run. So that was like kind of exciting to begin with. But I just got bored by the entire premise a little bit. And I really didn't like it when they got to the like facility. It just felt very clinical. It felt very like void of like any kind of color, and also void of any kind of enjoyment too. Like I just honestly wasn't interested. There's a lot of similarities to Carrie, obviously, because Carrie has telekinesis, Charlie has pyrokinesis. So there was some comparisons there, and I felt bad for Charlie too. You know, she is such a young girl, and she has had to like look after her dad on several occasions, apparently, according to the text. And being on the run and all of that was definitely something that I felt so bad for her. But yeah, at the same time, I genuinely couldn't have cared less by the end. I was so bored. Unfortunately, it was one of those ones where I don't think the premise warranted like how many pages it is, like 500 pages or something. Like it didn't warrant that many pages. And some Stephen King books are overtly long, absolutely. But even then, like say with The Stand as well, it is very, very long, but it held my attention pretty much all the way through. And I was never really bored per se. Whereas Firestarter was shorter and it was just kind of boring. I really didn't really care for it. So yeah, I found it like a bit of a drab and not really much to say about it too. Whew. And then Roadwork. Oh gosh, this is where I'm going to start getting a little bit negative. I really did not like Roadwork. It's one of my least favorites like of all time of like a Stephen King novel. It was so boring. I didn't like the main character. I wasn't rooting for him. Like the fact that his house was like in jeopardy because of like a road extension, I did feel bad for to begin with. But then as the book went on, oh my gosh, I was just like, okay, you know what? I hope the road extension works out. I can't wait for you to lose your house, which is probably awful for me to say. But like, I just didn't like him all that much. I love the exploration of like modernity and how modernity is kind of, you know, taken over from like tradition. And I liked the idea that, you know, the world is changing and sometimes we can't stop that from happening. I like that. But just like kind of Firestarter, I was rather bored by it. It's another one where I don't feel like I have all that much to say about it, because as soon as I read it, I was just so relieved. I was so relieved to have finished it and to move on from it. I just don't think there was that much that really was great about it. Yeah, I actually think this is my least favorite so far of Stephen King's books. Like 100% my least favorite, 1 star, bottom of the barrel, essentially. Pennywise the Clown can keep that. And then Cujo, oh my gosh, I actually really love Cujo. Oh my gosh, like again, it's one of those ones that is so utterly emotional and got me so teary-eyed by the end of it as well. Oh, Stephen King knows. He knows how to tug at your heartstrings. And Cujo, he just tried to be a good boy. He is a good boy. Cujo, I would probably put under Carrie and above The Shining. I don't know if many people would think that's like unpopular or anything. Like putting Cujo above The Shining and The Stand, like who do you think you are? But like it's the fact that we had the event, like Cujo, he gets bitten by a bat and he becomes rabid and he then becomes like the villain of the story. I do air quote villain and stuff because that's not Cujo anymore, you know what I mean? Like Cujo was such a lovely dog, and then this awful thing happens, and it's through a series of unfortunate events that it does happen. And I felt like Cujo acted as a kind of metaphor for kind of running away from your problems, not tackling your problems head on, and, you know, delaying what you should have done a long time ago. So we have like the human characters like Donna and what was the main character called again? Vic? Yeah, Vic, and they're Tad's parents. And you see how a lot of the times they do try to run away from their problems, especially Donna as well. Like, they try not to confront their problems. And there's such an unraveling of it all throughout the book. And I know a lot of people criticize it because a lot of it is kind of set in a car and it takes a long time and stuff like that. But oh my God, I ate it up. I honestly enjoyed it that much. And it is a little bit further down just because, yeah, I do agree with some of the criticisms with it being a little bit too like long in places, 100%. But the death scenes in this one were so incredibly chilling. Like, I feel like some of the goriest and some of the most chilling death scenes as well. And also the fact that people don't really know what's going on. Like, you have clueless characters running around like headless chickens and not knowing exactly what's going on. And yet you, the reader, you do know what's going on. And so it's kind of, in a way, making me feel like I have a little bit of a one-up from the characters in the book. And I'm just like kind of shouting at them like, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that. You know, it's such a good one. And yeah, that sense of dread early on, I felt so bad for Cujo. Cujo deserved better, okay? Cujo deserved way better. I will never ever forget Cujo. I actually read it twice as well. I've read it twice. I did have a pet death in the middle of reading Cujo the very first time. So that was rather upsetting and definitely has like made me appreciate, you know, some certain things that were explored in Cujo. So yeah, I feel like my thoughts on these books are going to be majorly rather positive. And then, unfortunately, we do get to The Running Man. I don't love The Running Man as much as a lot of people do. I've seen a lot of really good reviews about this one. And obviously, this was like Richard Bachman. I have included a lot of the Richard Bachman books as well in my read of Stephen King. So The Running Man, it was one of those ones where I loved the premise again. You know, like, what do you mean? Like, there's like reality TV shows, not even just like the Running Man reality TV show, but I remember it saying something about there being reality TV shows of people on treadmills and they have heart conditions, and then like someone like dies of a heart attack on a treadmill and like the audience applauds and stuff like that. And, like, there's one called Dig Your Own Grave. And yeah, it just showed and highlighted the rise of reality television, I think, which I think was before, you know, its time as well. Like, I feel like a lot of the time Stephen King writes these things years in advance and kind of predicts the future a little bit like The Simpsons sometimes. But yeah, I do think The Running Man really did that as well. And it's also set in 2025. I read it at the end of 2024 and I'm talking about it now in 2025. So I find that very interesting. But oh my God, did I hate the main character. I was actively rooting against him too. I didn't like him at all. So Ben was our main character, and I don't think Stephen King did a good enough job at, you know, highlighting his family. So he's like doing this for his family, but we don't really see his family all that much. There are certain reasons why, but like we didn't really get to know them. So I'm like, why do I care? I don't care. And I didn't care at all during the entire thing. But I do think because I was actively rooting against the main character, I couldn't fully immerse myself in it. Don't get me wrong, I do again like love the initial world building, but yeah, I didn't like following this person. And I don't need to love a main character in order for me to enjoy the book. I just need to at least like, I don't know, for a plot like this, I need to at least want them to succeed. And I didn't want Ben to succeed. Again, it makes me sound like an absolute bitch. I get it. Yeah, Running Man, I wasn't that impressed with by the end, unfortunately. I don't think it was like that well written. And it was definitely one of the most action-packed and most exciting ones, but still not one of my favorites. So I would probably put The Running Man between Firestarter and Rage. Yeah, because I feel like I definitely prefer the characters in Firestarter. I prefer the action in The Running Man, but I can be somebody who is more of a character-driven reader than a plot-driven reader at times. And yeah, I couldn't fully love the plot because I couldn't fully love the characters in The Running Man. Whereas in Firestarter, I didn't care for the plot, but I did really like the characters. And then we have Christine, I would put at the top of Sometimes Dead Is Better. Not because I didn't like Christine. I actually really freaking enjoyed Christine so much. It is definitely bogged down again by like how long it takes for things to happen. And I do also think Christine had some of the best death scenes as well in Stephen King's books. And like it's kind of chilling as well. And a testament to Stephen King's writing too, because, you know, we have this sentient killing car and it sounds in theory a ridiculous thing, but Stephen King makes it effective. And yeah, like, I was genuinely terrified by Christine. And yeah, when the car heals itself, there's like a thump, thump, thump. And I feel like Stephen King is so good at describing that and describing the feelings around that and how sinister and terrifying that is. And yeah, like some of the best death scenes, in my opinion, which is so strange for me to say, because I went into this thinking it would be a little bit silly. I thought it would be a little bit silly, but it actually wasn't. And I love the exploration of the two main characters' backstories and like their friendship. So I believe they were called Arnie and Dennis. And yeah, the deterioration of their friendship through Christine and following that. And, you know, there's a lot of love there too. So I really did root for them and I felt so bad for them as well while all this was going on. But yeah, I do think the length of this one brings it down a little bit. And I will stop complaining about the length of books at some point in this because, you know, we do have It coming up as well. But yeah, Christine, anything else to say about it? No, I just really loved the vibes of it. I thought it was really good. But yeah, not one that I would resurrect. I definitely think there's better, but it's also like just genuinely like a rather enjoyable book. But with the length of it, I probably wouldn't reread it anytime soon. Cycle of the Werewolf, I did enjoy. I like the format of it. I like the illustrations, but I will say I do have beef with these illustrations because sometimes they will come, and I guess it might depend on what edition you have, but sometimes the illustrations will come 2 pages before that event would happen. So the amount of times the illustration spoils the story. Like there's a twist in like who the actual werewolf is, and it's spoiled by the illustration because the illustration comes before the reveal. I'm like, why? Like, what is the decision behind that? But I did love the format and how it was like a monthly thing. I love the fact that we have our main character. His name is Marty. He is disabled. He's in a wheelchair, but he's our hero. And I love that so much. And he's introduced in like the July section. So it takes a little while to get to the main character of this story. And yeah, I just love the kind of almost poetic feel of it. And the fact that this is a regular occurrence happening each month. This really scary thing happening and nobody knows what's going on or what's happening. I did love how gory some of the death scenes was as well. There was some like religious imagery too, which I appreciated. But yeah, other than that, it's rather unspectacular. I don't think it's like fleshed out enough for me to really give it the highest of ratings. Like it was enjoyable to read, not one I would revisit, especially when you like already know what happens. I feel like it's one of those things where it's kind of like read it once and that's kind of it kind of deal. But it doesn't have the usual embellishment of Stephen King's stories, which obviously makes sense. It is like a novella. It's like very, very short and it's part graphic novel as well. It makes sense that it wouldn't be as embellished as his other works. But yeah, just for that reason, I can't really in good conscience give it an even higher rating because at the end of the day, like the story was very good and there were moments that I really did enjoy, but it just didn't really leave that much of a lasting impression on me. And so I think I might put it above Firestarter, potentially. Although actually no, I'll put it at the end of Sometimes Said Is Better because like it didn't feel like work reading it because it is like so short and so like snappy and in all of that. So probably like the bottom of there, definitely above Firestarter though, because Firestarter was again like rather boring. Like there was quite a bit of boring stuff in there, but I think Cycle of the Werewolf is never boring. And one of my biggest criticisms of any book, if it's boring, then that's like the worst sin you can commit. So at least Cycle of the Werewolf is not boring. Oh, and then Pet Sematary. This is my favorite Stephen King book of all time. I've read it twice. It just resonates with me so much. The theme of death, I think, is explored beautifully. It's so raw and so tragic. The plot itself as well is so very exciting as well. You know, I feel like it's one of those books that doesn't ever really let up. Like the length of it, I think is perfect. It's not too long. It's not too short. And yeah, just like so much of it, I can just remember so vividly. I could read 1,000 books and Pet Sematary will still stand out so much. Again, I love the atmosphere so much, like of like the Pet Sematary and the idea of things coming back to life is a rather scary thing. Like it's something that you would want to happen because like if you ever lose someone in your life, you never really want anyone you love to die and you would do anything you possibly can to bring them back. And I love how Pet Sematary explored that. And I also explored that, you know, yeah, sometimes dead is better. So I love that. Genuinely terrifying at times as well. I think it's one of Stephen King's scarier novels. And obviously the stuff with the animals breaks my heart because I'm a huge lover of animals. I have 2 cats myself at the minute, Ash and Tobu. Love them so much. And yeah, if anything ever happened to them, it would genuinely break my heart. So yeah, it just happened to so many fears. I think it's so fantastically written. It had an ending that I really enjoyed as well. Really sympathized with the main characters too. Yeah, just an amazing book, honestly, an amazing book. One that I'll probably talk the least about because it's one that's really hard not to get into spoilers of like why I love it so much. But again, I do have, I think Pet Sematary was in episode 4 of Gavin Reads All the King. So do check that out. Oh, and then we get to the fucking Talisman. Yeah. I did not like the Talisman. I was actually So I'm in my Gavin Reads All the King series, I will never DNF a book. I'm going to be reading every single Stephen King book from beginning to end, no exceptions. The Talisman, I was so close to DNFing so many times. I did not like The Talisman, and I'm so sorry to all the Talisman lovers out there. I thought it wasn't really written all that great. The whole stuff with the territories I thought was so underdeveloped. I thought everything came way too easily to Jack as well, the main character. So many character names are like so similar and exactly the same as other main characters. So it's very easy to like get people mixed up sometimes. But like, I genuinely actively hated this book. I really didn't like it. I struggled reading it so much, and I was just wishing and wishing and wishing it was over. There is a saving grace for this book though, and why I put it above Roadwork. I loved Wolf. Wolf, I freaking loved. I loved the scenes in the was like a Home for Wayward Boys scene, and there was like a reverend. That was terrifying. Loved those scenes. However, all the scenes that I actually ended up enjoying, you could have cut them out and it would have done absolutely nothing to the plot. I felt like there was way too much meandering, way too many scenes in this book that really could have been just cut straight out and you wouldn't have missed anything. You really would not have missed anything. And I really didn't care for the main plot as well, of Jack trying to save his mother by saving her twinner in the territories or whatever. It just felt like he went the long way around. There are definitely better ways that he could have pursued that quest that he went on. And yeah, I just felt like too much of it was maybe handed to him. Maybe controversial to say, but it just didn't feel like a challenge at all. Way too many detours. And yeah, I really didn't like Jack as a main character either. As I said, Wolf was my favorite character in this book. Jack like abuses him. Jack treats him like shit. He treats him like actual shit. And poor Wolf. You know what I mean? So like it made me hate the main character even more, made me hate reading this even more, and I am dreading reading the sequels. I will be reading them. I think Stephen King is currently writing Talisman 3 at the minute, or something like that. I'm like, oh my god, why does it have to be 3? Why does it have to be 3 freaking books in the series? I'm dreading. Is it Bleak House, something like that? Oh my god. Oh. Anyway, genuinely actively hated the Talisman, but at least there were parts of it, again, like Wolf made it better than Roadwork. You know what I mean? Like there was not really many saving graces in Roadwork, but at least in the Talisman we had Wolf. But again, if you cut Wolf out of the Talisman, it wouldn't have done anything to the plot, which breaks my heart to say, but it's the truth. Okay, The Eyes of the Dragon is an interesting one. It was my first Stephen King fantasy, because I'm not quite doing the Dark Tower books just yet. And I love the fact that we had Randall Flagg come back, because I freaking loved his character in The Stand and I find him so utterly fascinating. So to have him back and to kind of see some origins of him was very interesting. This was like more like medieval fantasy and I love those vibes, but I didn't really like the whole plot. Honestly, like, I don't think the plot really captivated me. I'm not really big into, you know, fantasy political plots and things to do with like the royal family, like the princes and the king and, you know, like the throne and stuff like that. That doesn't usually interest me all that much. So unfortunately, I think the plot itself, like it's not a bad book, like it's not a terrible book. It's one that I just felt like it had a plot that I didn't much care for to begin with. And nothing against Stephen King writing this as well. I think he wrote this for his daughter, which is so lovely. And I do remember as well, there was a scene where Flagg chases Peter, and that was a very tense, exciting scene. So yeah, Flagg saved this book for me. I think he did a lot of the heavy lifting. And yeah, but then again, like sometimes as well, characters would do things that didn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, I don't want to spoil anything, but like say someone is condemned to death and then there's someone who randomly decides to change their mind on it because of a letter. You know, like that's what I'm saying about that. Anyway, I want to put The Eyes of the Dragon above The Running Man, I think. Yeah, I think sandwich between Firestarter and The Running Man is like not too shabby, honestly. Yeah, not too much more to say about that. Thinner had like I think my favorite ending of a Stephen King book yet. Like I kind of loved the idea of like revenge and how that can consume your life and that you shouldn't really pursue it. And then we have the ending of it, and I genuinely loved the ending. It was so good. It was really interesting to follow Billy and his desperation to like lift this curse that is on him. And yeah, I find that curse that he has of him like continuously losing weight, and he isn't able to stop losing weight like at all, and so he's going to get like thinner and thinner and thinner, and it's a terrifying prospect. And also I read this at a time when I was myself losing a lot of weight, so it just resonated with me like even more. Love the whole imagery with the pie and the way that kind of like it moves and looks like it's breathing almost. It's like pulsating. Oh, there's like so much like disgusting, gross visuals in this. Wasn't a big fan of like the depiction of like some of the people in this too. And I do think that drags it down a little bit. But Thinner, I would put just under Christine. It is one of the shorter ones as well. So again, it's not as fleshed out. And I do think there are a lot of scenes in Christine that I loved more than Thinner. But no, I think this is like still a really good place to put it, in my opinion. Just a very interesting kind of book. Oh, and then we get to it. Oh my gosh, like my very first time reading it, I had seen the films, apart from the miniseries with Tim Curry. I've seen the 2017 and 2019 part 1 and part 2. I've seen those, but this was my first time reading it, and I loved it. I mean, it wasn't perfect. I will put it below Salems Lot. I think Salems Lot has more of a tighter narrative structure than it. But yeah, so much to love about it. I love the Losers Club. Love the characters. So many standout scenes. Like, you know, Georgie into the boat. What an opening. What an absolute opening. And I actually think it's the longest I've talked about a Stephen King book. Like, even more than The Stand. The Stand is longer, at least in my version of The Stand. But I talked about it for well over an hour, I think, on my episode 5 of Gavin Reads All the King. And there was just so much to say about it. There were so many scenes that really stood out. There's like Patrick Hofstetter, I think his name was. Oh my god, that really got under my skin. But also, yeah, like Pennywise. Obviously, like it's just like so iconic. I've never rooted for characters more than I did for the characters in it. I loved following the child protagonist and the adult protagonist, and I loved how it all connected. Again, like there were some scenes that drag it down. Wasn't really the biggest fan of the ending, but a lot of people did tell me that the ending will probably make more sense once I've read the Dark Tower series, so I will absolutely be doing that, and I might change my opinion on the ending when we get to it. But no, like so much to love about it. Loved the exploration of Derry as well. Some of the interludes were very interesting to read about because I love, you know, learning about what happened in this town. But then there were other interlude sections that I felt just dragged it down. I felt some of it was rather boring and didn't really add a whole lot to the lore. But other than that, really, really great. Loved it so much. Definitely one of his more scarier ones. Yeah. Yeah. Misery. Oh my god, Misery. Oh, love the film so much. The film is like one of my hero films, I would probably say. Misery is my second favorite Stephen King book of all time. Yeah, I loved it. Absolutely freaking loved it. Annie Wilkes, that little bitch. Oh my god, like what a fantastic character in like all the wrong ways. You know what I mean? Like she was utterly terrifying, but so human, so utterly human. And the whole scenario as well of like being trapped in this house and not being able to move. And oh my gosh, again, so many great scenes. The tension of Paul Sheldon trying to get out of this house and he's like bedbound, and the amount of times when he's like nearly caught and stuff like that. Oh my god, it's terrifying. Genuinely terrifying. I feel like it was such like a thriller. It's more like a thriller because it just thrilled me so much. And you just don't know what Annie's going to do next. Like she could snap or she could be the nicest person. It's just so utterly bizarre to read like the flip between characters. But what masterful character work there is in there. So utterly brilliant in so many ways. I really did love the ending as well. I thought the ending was really good. Setting itself was fantastic. Yeah, but I was rooting for the main character the entire time. I was rooting for him. And that really does help with me loving some of these Stephen King books. Like I was actively rooting against the main character, the Running Man. But in Misery, Paul Sheldon, I was hoping he would make it out alive. Some naughty scenes as well. And definitely a lot more gorier than the movie too. Definitely a lot more gory. The leg scene, you know, the legs, that was very tense. Like the amount of times I like clenched my butthole reading this book. Oh, honestly, if I had a butt clench counter, it would have been in the double digits. Nearly triple digits, probably. Fantastic novel. Another one that I've read twice now. I would happily read a third, fourth, fifth, and sixth time. Freaking Tommyknockers. Oh my god, like this had so much potential at the very start of this book. I'm going to say the Tommyknockers had so much potential. I love the premise of it. I love the idea of like the Tommyknockers and them coming like to Earth and, you know, all this and the other. But it didn't really pan out the way I wanted it to. It was so messy. It was so messy. I thought characters were all over the place. Seeing people's bodies change. And oh my god, it's so grotesque and so gory and so nasty. And it made me like cringe all the time as well with how gory and grisly some of it came across as. There's like some really strange tentacle stuff in this. There are dildos the size of mutant carrots in this. And to top it all off, there is a sentient killing Coca-Cola machine. Some of this was a little bit too crazy. I think this was a little bit too crazy. Couldn't wrap my head around it at all. again, like we had such great potential to begin with, and it just went balls to the wall crazy by the end. I thought we were off our rocker here. And it took like 800 pages for like a lot of the plot to really fully kick off. It's an overtly long book. An overtly long book. It would have benefited so much from being shorter, especially since a whole lot of it just did not make a whole lot of sense. I didn't love this book, and I really wanted to. I really wanted like a really cool like alien-like story that would really tap into the horror and stuff. There's actually a short story in, I think, Night Shift that was kind of what I wanted Tommyknockers to be. And so the Tommyknockers, I would probably put at the top of We All Float Down here. It did feel like work reading it, absolutely, but I feel like a lot of the craziness is just like, I don't know, like maybe this is an underrated gem, maybe a lot of people do love this one. I couldn't get my head around it. I really couldn't. I couldn't understand what was fully going on. I don't think it was cohesive enough for me to really understand like the point of this story. I could probably do a reread in the future where I kind of know what to expect going into it now, because I feel like I was just so blindsided by what actually happened in it for me to fully enjoy it. Because again, a freaking killing Coca-Cola machine. So much weirdness. Anyway, I have two. Well, one is a short story collection. The other one is like 4 novellas. And these are the most recent reads of mine. I read them last month and I did them for episode 6 of Gavin Reads All the King. So Night Shift and Different Seasons. I just want to say here, both absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed both of them so much. They obviously both have like stories I think like drags it down just a little bit, so they're not both perfect. But Night Shift itself, I loved so many stories. I actually really loved the Children of the Corn story. Never seen the movie of it, but I kind of vaguely knew it was about like kids and like killer kids because of The Simpsons. And that was like my only like knowledge of it. But yeah, I thought that was terrifying. You know what? I need to get my books of it because I want to see which stories I love the most. And yeah, I have like these editions. So I love these editions. I do love the storyteller editions. I think they're like really pretty and stuff. So obviously superficial of me, but I love it when books match. Anyway, let's see which stories I love the most. Oh, the Jerusalem's Lot stories. One for the Road, I gave 5 out of 5. Freaking loved One for the Road. Jerusalem's Lot, I gave 4.5. Graveyard Shift, I gave 4.5. The Mangler, 4.5. The Boogeyman was good. Not my favorite story in here, but I gave it a 4 out of 5. Sometimes They Come Back, 4.5. Love that one. Strawberry Spring as well. Love that one too. Very creepy, very atmospheric. Yeah, Children of the Corn, I gave 5 out of 5. One for the Road, I gave 5 out of 5. Like, there are so many great, solid stories in this. There were some stories that let it down, like Night Surf, I didn't really care for. I know that's connected to The Stand, but it's such like a nothing burger of a short story. Battleground, I didn't enjoy. Trucks, I didn't really enjoy. The Ledge, I didn't think was that amazing. I Know What You Need, didn't love all that much. And The Woman in the Room. You know, there's something to love about all these stories, and I do go in depth with every single story in episode 6 of Gavin Reads All the King. But yeah, definitely not some of my favorite stories in this, but there are some stories in this that are genuine, like 4, 4.5, 5 stars. Freaking love them. So Night Shift, I will probably put at the very top of Come Play With Us. Yeah, I do think I prefer it over Carrie in general. Because, yeah, some of these stories were just so standout and I did freaking love them. And I really do think Stephen King is so effective with his short stories because, you know, sometimes he does waffle on in his larger books, but in a short story, he can just get straight to the point and just boom, he just hooks you. So then we have Different Seasons. So we have Rita Hayworth in Shawshank Redemption. That was my least favorite story in this. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. I still think it was very, very good, but it wasn't my favorite. Apt Pupil, I gave 4.5. That was actually my favorite in this collection. I was not expecting Apt Pupil whatsoever. I had no idea what it was about. I found it so utterly fascinating from beginning to end. Had no idea where the story was going to go with that one. And it just like devolved into some really gruesome and gory stuff. And there's definitely a scene involving a cat that will never leave my brain. I hated it. But again, like at the same time, like this is horror. Like this is genuinely chilling to read. So like I didn't mind it as much, but like I do hate reading stuff like that, but it was so chilling. So I did love the story of it. The Body and The Breather Method, I gave both like 4 stars out of 5. The Body was definitely one that I never seen the movie Stand By Me, so I had no idea what The Body was like actually kind of about. I just thought it was going to be a body. And there was. So that was really interesting. I did like that story, but I didn't like fully love it. You know, 4 stars, it's a great rating. And then The Breathing Method is definitely one that I will not forget. Not like overall like my favorite story, but like there's a certain moment at the end, like what the Breathing Method actually is and how it ties into the end of that story, oh my gosh, I'll never forget that. I will never ever forget that. And because of that, I will also put different seasons above Carrie, but behind Night Shift, I think. I do think Night Shift is my favorite like short story collection so far. I haven't read any of the other ones because I'm doing them sporadically for my Gavin Reads All the Kings series. So I will be dipping in and out of them, doing full episodes dedicated to them. So they will be coming. But yeah, Night Shift was so freaking good. It was so good in different seasons. Honestly, what a very strong book. I think maybe I originally put different seasons over Night Shift because the average of different seasons of like the stories is generally higher than Night Shift, but there are some 5 out of 5 star stories in Night Shift that I freaking love. But I really enjoy both of them. I thought they were both like really freaking good. So I definitely cannot wait to read more of Stephen King's short stories. So yeah, this is my current leaderboard for Gavin Reads All the King. And yeah, we have Pet Sematary, then Misery, Salem's Lot, It, and The Dead Zone. They're my top 5 Stephen King books at the minute. And then we do have Long Walk at number 6, but still like one of my number 1 favorite books of his. So that's our top 6. Night Shift, different seasons, Carrie and Cujo rounds out the top 10. And yeah, The Shine in the Stand do just miss the top 10 at the minute. They're sliding down a little bit. I do think maybe in the future, you know, upon rereads, I might enjoy them more. But they are still like, again, like they're up here. You know what I mean? Like they're not terrible. Again, like don't come for me. But yeah, they're still really good. And then Christine Thinner, Cycle of the Werewolf are like really enjoyable stories. Absolutely. But I could give or take at points. And then Firestarter, Eyes of the Dragon, The Running Man, and Rage, I could definitely leave in the past. And then the Tommyknockers, the Talisman, and Roadwork are some of my least favourite so far of Stephen King's works. I don't really like any of those at the bottom. But I would say I have enjoyed, in part, reading every single Stephen King book I've read so far. Even the Tommyknockers had really enjoyable moments. Again, love the wolf stuff, the Talisman, so that was enjoyable to read. Maybe Roadwork is the only thing that I really just did not take any enjoyment from, which is why it's at the very bottom. But other than that, I do think so much of what I mentioned in this video, I love Stephen King. Okay, please don't hate me. I love Stephen King. I love his books. This is honestly so stellar and solid for, you know, the first 22 books I've read of his that, yeah, I just have such an affinity towards so many of these. And I would love to know your opinions on, well, one, my tier ranking, but please be nice. Or at least if you're going to criticize, you know, at least be nice about it. And I would love to know your rankings of the Stephen King books down in the comments too. So please do let me know all of your thoughts as well. And I will absolutely be, again, checking in a year from now. Every October, I think, will be like an annual check-in of my progress with reading all of Stephen King's books and updating the leaderboard so you can see the progress of like how things will change. And if anything can beat Pet Sematary as my favorite Stephen King book. I'm hoping it happens, but at the same time, I love Pet Sematary so much. I don't know if it will be beat. But you know what? Miracles can happen. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to leave this video a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you haven't already. Leave all the comments down below. Again, leave all of your rankings as well. I would love to know what you think of Stephen King's books. Please don't spoil us for future Stephen King books as well. I am going into pretty much all of them from now on, like pretty blind. So I would appreciate some like spoiler-free thoughts on like your own ranking of Stephen King's books. And even if you don't want to rank all of Stephen King's books, maybe your top 10. Your top 10 would be pretty handy to know. I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons for supporting my channel. If you'd like to join my Patreon, then the link is in the description below. And I hope I will see you in the next video. Bye.